just want to get some of the housekeeping items out of the way. Just to start, this meeting will be recorded. All attendees will be muted and cameras off to minimize background noise, just to get things flowing a little bit easier. The Q&A box will be open for the entirety of the meeting, so feel free to pop any questions in the box as soon as they come into your head. The speakers will be answering these questions, some of your questions live at the end of the presentation. And don't worry if your question doesn't have time today. All questions and answers will be sent to the attendees in a document after the webinar. As well as the slides and your CLP certificates will be shared after the meeting as well. Closed captioning is available, so look to your chat for instructions on how to get that set up. Moving on. Today's topics for the agenda today, we will begin with the benefits of using the MAS print management solutions. Moving on to writing your print management solutions requirement and understanding the leasing terms and conditions. Moving on to the industry perspective, learning from some of our industry partners on maximizing competition and reducing costs, ending with your questions and answers. I do want to launch a poll just to get an idea of our attendees today and which topics are of most interest to you. So we can launch your poll, fill out whichever answer choices respond best for your situation, and we can take a look at some of the responses in a minute. Okay, so looks like the results came in and we have a lot of interest in developing GSA's print management solutions knowledge. So we're definitely going to be covering those areas today, as well as a pretty good numbers across the board for all of today's topics. So we'll definitely get into those. Moving on, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Jim Boyle from GSA's IWAC. He's a business management specialist. Take it away, Jim.
Thank you, Olivia. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Boyle. I'm a business management specialist here at GSA. I'm a former CEO for about 12 years, and I'm a current member of the print management solutions team here at GSA. Next slide, please. Okay, so just going over today's presentation, I'm going to give a brief overview of the schedule itself and some of the stuff that our print management provides. I'm going to talk about the schedule versus open market procurements, and then I'll cover our online tools and resources that the schedule offers, but also specifically how it offers assistance for print management. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so those of you not familiar with the GSA Multiple Award Schedule program, I'm just going to provide a quick broad review of the schedule. I hope not to bog you down in too much detail. I spent many years working as a CEO on the schedule, and some of this stuff is embedded in my brain, so it comes naturally to me. The MAS program is made up of many MAS contracts, obviously, which are government-wide contracts for commercial products, services, and solutions. The contract life is potentially 20 years with a 5-year initial award and then 3 5-year options. While you may have heard otherwise, perhaps from the quote-unquote other guys, there is no fee for using the schedule. The MAS program provides a simple acquisition process under FAR 8.4. If you have trouble remembering what part of the FAR to look in, just remember an old saying we have here in IWAC: 8 is great. Okay, well, maybe that's just me. The simple acquisition process through FAR 8.4 means you can get what you need at a competitive price in less time than it would to take to write your own solicitation. The schedule program can help you reduce your acquisition time from purchase request to award, because we've already performed the market research, created pre-negotiated pricing from which you can continue to seek lower pricing, and establish terms and conditions that enable you quickly to remit a request for quote. There's no need to synopsize that solicitation. GSA's vetting process to determine the contractor's financial viability, technical ability, and past performance to provide you with suppliers who will compete for your business. Schedule contracts are also in compliance with the Trade Agreements Act and are NDAA 899 compliant as well. With MAS, you have the flexibility of placing orders for products and services over time in the quantities needed at the time they are needed with a blanket purchase agreement or BPA. For those of you unfamiliar, a BPA is an agreement that you can establish with one or more of our schedule holders to fill repetitive needs for supplies or services over, again, a 5-year period with options. These BPAs can be particularly useful for print management solutions, as it would give customers the options to utilize specialty products offered by different schedule vendors without the need for repetitive procurements. You can fill even larger and complex requirements by leveraging contractor teaming agreements, or CTAs, or subcontracting possibilities. A CTA is when one MAS contractor teams with another MAS contractor to offer a complex solution for a requirement. Subcontracting varies in a little bit that the prime contractor would be the GSA contract holder, and they would subcontract to whomever to perform the work. The agency would only deal with the prime contractor as they were the one who would have the GSA contract and the contract with the agency. Schedules can also help you meet your small business goals, or at the very least, help you make meaningful progress toward your goals by placing orders with contractors in various socioeconomic categories. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm going to provide just a real brief differences between the schedule and some open market procurements that you may be doing. For the purpose of the presentation, I'm going to refer to both open market procedures under FAR 13, which are orders under the SAT, and FAR 15, which is orders above the SAT as quote unquote open market. So just, quickly, schedule orders placed are competitive procedure, exempt from the full and open competition requirements of FAR 0.6. If you're placing an open market order, that has to follow FAR 0.6. So the benefits for those not in contracting, it basically means the CEO has to do a lot less administrative work, and it takes a lot less time. For the schedules, ordering can be placed in days or weeks, where a lot of times an open market procurement can take much longer than that and are more likely to protest. The schedule, you have the etools available, which I'll cover in our next slide. eBuy, eLibrary, and a GSA Advantage, which are all available to schedule users, whereas open market, you don't have these etools. With the schedule, formal debriefs are not required. In an open market procurement, formal debriefs are required. For the schedule, FAR 19 does not apply, which means it doesn't mean set-asides are not allowed. It just means that discretionary set-asides are allowed under FAR 8.405-5. With the open market, the rule of 2 requires a set-aside for under FAR 19. Again, I'm not trying to bog down with too much FAR here. These are just several examples of how the schedule program can benefit ordering agencies over the open market. The real takeaway for those not in contracting, and maybe those in contracting who have previously been schedule averse, is that the schedule program offers a quicker, simpler, and less labor-intensive acquisition solution than the open market. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go over some of the e-tools I mentioned in the last slide that the schedule offers. First is GSA eLibrary. It's an online database for the latest contract award information for MAS contracts. eLibrary provides up-to-date information on the vendor's terms and conditions for their contract, and all the relevant information such as POCs, email addresses, websites. It also can provide information on schedule program changes, updates to the solicitation. You have the ability to download the current solicitation and other terms and conditions and related documents that we have there. And it also provides a link to GSA Advantage, which is kind of like the GSA Amazon for our MAS solutions, except that I'm not sure if GSA Advantage is spying on you the way Amazon does. So GSA eBuy. If you already know what you want, you can go, you can post your requirements or statement of work through GSA eBuy. This is an electronic RFQ system, and using the system, agencies can prepare and post RFQ packages for specific supplies and products and services offered under the GSA schedule program. Each RFQ is posted in the eBuy system for a designated period of time and assigned to a special item number or SIN under the schedule. Sellers that are automatically listed under their awarded SINs or functional categories. For GSA schedules, buyers may notify all sellers listed under a particular SIN category, or they may select the vendors they wish to solicit to under that particular SIN. Even if a vendor is not solicited under a particular SIN, they are eligible to quote if an RFQ goes out under eBuy or against the schedule. Government users who have an account for GSA Advantage, which is easy to sign up, can also use that account to access GSA eBuy. Some buying guidance and sample acquisition documents. So the print management team, we have set up some sample templates that we have for different print management solutions that we've seen over the years. Once you have your requirements ready, we can provide you with them or even advise you on how to craft your RFQ package. We can assist you with navigating the samples and finding out which one perhaps is best matched for your procurement. In addition to our assistant, our print management team has also developed a resource document called the Guide to Buying Multifunctional Devices. I believe someone else will touch on that a little bit more, but just briefly, it is a step-by-step process on how to buy a multifunctional device if that's something you're familiar with. Our print management team is always here, ready. Myself and the other members, if you want to hop on a call, if you just have a few questions through email or just want to chat about your requirement, we can provide assistance that way, advice, guidance, whatever you may need. Just give us a call or an email and we'll be glad to help. So Market Research as a Service, also known as MRAS. This is another free service that GSA customer agencies can take advantage of. MRAS is a free support for GSA customers that'll help make your acquisition more streamlined. So if you're unsure of where to start, GSA customer service directors or CSDs will look at your requirement and perform a scope review. The rapid review is typically completed in 24 to 48 hours. They will then draft an RFI for you so that you'll be able to send it out to existing schedule holders to receive their feedback on your requirements. Lastly, they will surmise all the information and provide you a detailed report of the findings from the RFI. And then lastly, I'll go real quick. I know I'm pressed for time here. Assisted acquisition service and complementing advising service. Our assisted acquisition team may be able to provide additional contracting assistance during procurement. This is a fee-based service that can provide cradle-to-grave procurement service for your print solutions on a case-by-case basis. Again, this is case-by-case, and some projects we're able to take, some not. It's dependent on a number of factors. This solution can work great if your agency doesn't have the time, resources, or capability to perform a print solutions procurement, but still desires to acquire the products or services. If for some reason we review your requirement and we determine it's not in our mutual best interest to proceed, we can still offer our subject matter expertise via our complimentary advisory service, whether it's the print management team or other expert CEOs that we have on staff who have done this many, many times. I'd like to thank you for your time today. And again, I'd like to remind you, our print management team is always here to help. So just give us a call or an email and we'll be glad to assist you. And I look forward to hearing you from the near future. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Now we'll hear from Mike Burrell, Supervisory Contracting Officer from GSA's IWAC as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending. And Jim did cut into some of my things to speak about, but that's fine. Here I'm going to talk about determining your requirements. And the need assessment is a definite requirement that you should take just to analyze what's needed in your department or in your division or overall in your organization. Our GSA team, market research analysts and customer service directors can assist you in finding these GSA contract holders and capable of meeting your procurement needs. As for my team, we do manage all the contracting, all the contractors under office management in Region 3. So as Jim stated, we can help you as a team for management services in these areas. So going back to the needs assessment, we do have teams that will help you assess the proper, create the proper goals for you in regards to a fleet assessment, creating a statement of work, which we do have a template for. And the template could be 5 pages, 1 page. It all depends on what you need. And instead of an estimation, we'd like to do actual because it's based on its pricing, and an actual number will suffice if you're able to give us a proper need assessment. And the statement of work is going to tell you everything that you need and want for your requirements. And I think that's key in this particular part of just looking for your requirements and going out looking for the contractor to do the service and or provide you products. And then as Jim mentioned earlier, guide to buying multifunctional devices. Olivia, could you click on that link, please? So it's going to take you right to this website, and you have all your information right there just to look for, the necessary documents or just guidance, and just follow it. And there's a lot to read, but it's there to help you get through it as she scrolls through. So I just wanted to go to that link so you could see where you could go, and it's going to be in this slide in this presentation when we give it to you at the end of this overall presentation. You'll be able to have that for your records and go back to. Next slide, please. So here are opportunities for financing your print management solution requirements. You have a lease, you have your purchase option, you have your lease, and when it comes to operating lease, a lease to own, and then rental. Your purchase option can be generally preferable for financing and procurement. But as you all know, as an agency, you don't have the appropriated funds up front majority of the time. So you tend to lease. And you're going to lease based on the time frame, 1 to 2 years, 24, let's say 36, 48 months. This leasing will be explained in more detail when the next gentleman comes up. So then you have a lease to own operation. And well, in establishing, lease terms, lessor remains and keeps title and ownership of the device if you select lease to own. And I don't know how many of you will do that because technology constantly changes. So you want to lease, and then you renew, and then you upgrade into a bigger and better option on the equipment. So we will answer a lot of questions because I know you may have some questions in regards to leasing and purchasing. But please hold those questions to the end because I'll be able to answer, like to give you more detail in explaining leasing. All right, and rentals are usually conferences, small conferences or things like that probably go for 3 weeks to a month. It depends. It's not highly used, but it's available. Next slide, please. The maintenance plans are a definite key to every time you purchase or lease equipment. You would like to have a maintenance plan for a technician to come out and take care of the equipment if necessary. You have a cost per click plan, meaning you're going to pay for every impression that that's done on the copier, scan, or what have you. You're going to just pay for that. I was thinking of an analogy, and the commercial by Liberty Insurance, where you pay for what you use, and that's what the cost per click is. You pay for what you use. Then you have the allowance plus the overage, where you pay a fee for the allowance and overage, but sometimes there's cases on a monthly basis that you might not go over, but you have that fixed pay or that fixed cost. So that goes back to your needs assessment. If you assess properly what your usage or volume is on your copiers, then you could possibly use an allowance with the overage, because this machine and this volume will happen. You have a tendency to go, let's say, 10,000 more prints than the normal 20,000 that you forecasted. So will that be the right fit for you? It all depends on your needs assessment. Or can you just go a flat fixed rate, and pay for whatever usage on the machine? So you have three choices: cost per click, allowance plus overage, and a flat rate. But it goes back to your needs assessments and your statement of work, is what you need and what you're requiring for the contractor to come in and do. And we have a list of contractors in office, under office management, that will be able to do the job. And next slide. And that'll be it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Last but not least, from GSA's IWAC, we have John Giannopoulos, Contracting Officer.
Thank you very much, Libby. I appreciate that. Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to talk to you about terminations. Next slide, please. All right, terminations, a subject some of us are very familiar with. It's a subject we may not necessarily like, however, it is an element of leasing. Hopefully the information I'm going to share with you today will provide some further insight on how terminations can impact your current leasing needs or potential future needs. The below links also will help. The first link there is a comprehensive guide on leasing commercial equipment with the government. The second link is an Excel spreadsheet with several tabs pertaining to lease calculations and applicable early termination computations. So very useful, especially when trying to determine what a termination fee might look like, what interest fees, lease rate factors and things of that nature, how that can affect your payment, especially as it pertains to an early termination. Because multi-year funding provides funds in excess of a 12-month period or fiscal year, terminations can and will occur. Termination clauses, however, can be a useful governance. It protects the government in the event that funds are unavailable or a bona fide need no longer exists. And it can also protect vendors that have committed to longer lease periods, such as 60 months. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, this is an excerpt from the Multiple Award Schedule Office Management Solicitation under A10, Printing and Photographic Equipment subcategory. The segmented letters and corresponding sections are, again, directly an excerpt from that section. And as we'll see, from the onset of the ordering process, termination ceiling charges and corresponding early termination calculations tables are discussed and established early in the order process. It's imperative both parties fully understand the guidelines of the termination and how it directly impacts the specific leased equipment. Next slide, please. There are three main scenarios for ending a lease prior to the full term. The first, the government determines they no longer have a bona fide need for the equipment or functionally similar equipment. I did want to highlight the functionally similar equipment because I will talk more about this on the next slide. In this example, for the termination for lack of bona fide need of the equipment or functionally similar equipment, this is a termination for non-appropriation, and termination charges do not apply. The second scenario, there is a continuing need, but adequate funds have not been appropriated to the ordering agency in an amount sufficient to continue to make the lease payment. Again, it falls under termination for non-appropriation. Termination charges do not apply. The third, the government chooses to terminate for convenience, and none of the above exceptions apply. This is a termination for convenience, and termination charges do apply per the termination ceiling amount agreed between the PCO and the ordering and the vendor. Next slide, please. All right. Termination for non-appropriation. An ordering agency does not typically enter into a lease believing they will not need they will need to terminate the lease early. An ordering agency reasonably believes the bona fide need will exist for the entire lease term, as well as corresponding funds in the amount sufficient to make all payments for the lease term. Therefore, it is not likely that leases entered will terminate prior to the full term, but it can happen. An ordering agency CO may terminate a lease early if, again, no longer a bona fide need for the equipment or functionally similar equipment. This is the section where I did want to talk about a little bit more about similarly functional equipment. I've been in the middle of a few lease disputes where an ordering agency attests to a lack of bona fide need. However, they will then maybe seek a separate procurement source for equipment which is newer, however, is very much similar. This may trigger a termination for convenience by the original vendor. In situations such as this, as the ordering agency, it may be helpful to first contact the original vendor and express your current need or possible desired revisions of the lease or the equipment, or the equipment. The second, there is a need, but adequate funds have not been appropriated to the ordering agency. This is at the discretion of the government entity. Also wanted to include the section 7 there, F, is another excerpt from the mass solicitation for office management. It further talks about ending the lease. Should the ordering agency elect to replace equipment under the lease, a new FAR 8.4 competition is required. This does not preclude substitution for failure to perform. So ordering agencies are advised when making the decision to conduct a new competition, consideration must be given to the early termination of existing equipment or the financial considerations involved with the rollover of existing equipment should the current contractor prevail. So as stated, again, situations where an ordering agency may terminate a lease early, and there still might be a need for similar equipment, functionally similar equipment. It would be beneficial to first contact the vendor and open up the line of communication. Next slide, please. Thank you. Termination for convenience. Here, the government, the ordering agency does acknowledge it is a termination for convenience. Termination ceiling charges will apply for each year of the lease term. The ordering agency and contractor will establish a termination ceiling amount, which again, this would be discussed and calculated at the onset of the ordering process. The contracting officer will insert the termination ceiling charge for the amount of the first year in the order and modify it for successive years upon availability of funds. The termination ceiling charge, there is a limit the amount a contractor may claim from the ordering agency, but again, this will be discussed at the onset of the ordering process. The below examples there are a few variable examples for calculating early termination for an operating lease. But as I stated, also included on the first slide I presented, there is an Excel spreadsheet which will also help with those calculations. But again, this will also help with those computations. Next slide. Here we just have a very generic termination ceiling example. We have a single product which has a total value of $4,370.78. It's a 24-month lease term, and the monthly payments are $196.86. We see that for each applicable month, we have the interest and the amortization. Therefore, if we look in month 3, the termination value is $3,859.91. In month 12, it's $2,268.01, all the way through month 24, which now has a 0 termination value. Again, this is a very basic model, but these tables will differ obviously based on the number of units, the duration of the term. But again, these tables will be very, very helpful at the onset of the order to help facilitate funding and also being aware of where your agency would stand in the event there's a termination for convenience early on. And that concludes my slide. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Now we'll hear from some of our industry partners, starting with Scott Hammond from RICO, John Sadisher from Xerox, and Maureen Sullivan from Xerox as well.
Scott, go ahead and invite yourself, introduce yourself. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Hammond. I'm a senior contract manager for RICO USA. I manage RICO's GSA Schedules program.
My name's John Sadisher. I'm the managed print specialist that supports the federal field sales organization nationwide. Actually, there are 3 of us. I'm typically involved in the larger services deals. I cover civilian agencies as well as DoD, and 34 years with Xerox. I work out of the DC office on M Street. Maureen?
Hi, I'm Maureen Sullivan. I'm a regional director here at Xerox. John and I are pinch hitting for Dave Goins, Scott's peer, who is out. I have been with Xerox for about 19 years and happily selling through the GSA contract for about 15 of them between the DC government and the federal government. So we are here to help and answer any questions and give our insights. As I have, like I said, happily been involved in selling off a GSA. I think it's an amazing contract.
Awesome. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay. Let me start this off by, the first bullet, and that's planning out your RFQ cycle. Especially with the larger ones, it takes longer than you think. And I'm a process person, and it's all about having a process that works for you. If you plan it out and stick to the timing that you set, I think the whole experience will be a positive one for not only yourself, but also for the vendors that are involved. It's not really all about timing. I think managed print RFQs are certainly more complex than the smaller amount of units. And you want to give yourself more time than you think you need to get this thing done. add a couple of extra weeks. And I know your clients are very anxious to get things going quickly and probably don't give you a heck of a lot of time to do it. But the more time you have, it just works out better. Also, we've all heard about the supply chain constraints that are out there. So that has complicated a lot of things relative to the timing. Okay, the availability that we're all used to, 30-day turnaround for delivery, et cetera, that's getting more and more difficult by the day to execute on. Plus, you're going to come up with contract expirations. Your clients will have, they may just give you a couple of weeks before their contract expires. So extensions may come into play. So I would say the first tip to share with you guys would be the planning. Scott, any comments?
I totally agree, John. Try to plan these out. Obviously, with supply chain and it's across the board. So the sooner you can at least make inquiries, even if it's through an RFI. And I definitely agree with a couple rounds of questions, because you might put an RFQ out where you get 4 or 5. You might get an RFQ out where you get 200 questions. And I know the clients are trying to answer them. But the more time you allow for questions, the better chance that you're going to actually get what you're looking for and get the solution that fits your agency the best.
Maureen, comments?
I very much agree. 2 to 3 day turnarounds are not what the industry, we don't like them. As much as everyone says, oh, 2 to 3 day turnaround, that's very difficult for your vendors. And I see Scott laughing, so I know that he agrees with me.
Yes.
It's not welcomed. We will handle it if we have to, but multiple rounds of questions, I think, is key. There's a lot of times where you will put out requirements, and vendors will ask questions. And as vendors, we try to steer it towards our company being able to respond. And that may change a requirement. You may say yes to something and not realize what you've just said yes to. And so having us being able to come back and clarify, did you really mean you wanted this? Did you really, is this, you just changed the RFP completely in that one round of questions. And so having a second round on anything large is key and will only benefit your clients. It doesn't benefit us, it benefits the government. So I cannot tell you, having more than one round on a large bid, and especially an MPS bid, is extremely important. You're doing a couple of devices, MFDs, very simple requirements. No, we probably don't need 2 rounds, but anything with services, 2 rounds is great if it's large.
Totally agree. Thank you, Maureen. On to the second bullet, write requirements that can be quantified and measurable. And you want to keep it objective and simple to understand. If you didn't write the requirement, make sure you understand it. You might get some questions regarding the requirements, so be prepared for that. And keep them as brief as possible. Keeping it simple just makes it easier for everybody. Plus, must meet clear. Understand the requirements being set are practical and needed. For example, difference between 30 versus 35 images per minute may not be significant in the big picture, but limiting to some vendors. So you might want to stay away and consider staying away from very restrictive requirements, and that really kind of sets potential protests in line, and people get a little concerned about that, right? So consider device speed, paper tray capacities, document capacities, some of those things that sound important, but try to keep as general as possible. Scott?
I I agree. Yeah, keep it simple. You know, understand. You know, BLI is Buyer's Lab is a wonderful resource.
Good
It's
point.
free. Anybody can use it. Understanding what are the standards? What are your needs? Yeah, 30 versus 35. In the grand scheme of things, they, you know, both engines can produce, you know, the same, you know, monthly volumes.
Yep.
Understanding, you know, what are your individual agency requirements? You know, have my security requirements changed? Make sure that those are very clear. You know, I've seen, you know, you can be A, B, C, or D. Well, you're going to get a wide range of answers if you don't really clearly define it.
Maureen?
What I would add to the requirements, and Scott brought it up, security, we have seen the MFDs move, you know, just from copiers over the past 10 to 15 years to true MFDs that are on secure networks, that are on highs and lows in the DoD. If you're working with an end user who was helping, you know, who was, you know, having the specs written, have they talked to IT? Have you gotten the IT requirements? Are MAC addresses required ahead of time? Is port security turned on? And I know these are a lot of terms that maybe COs don't handle, but IT needs to be involved. I can't tell you how many veterans deliveries we've all done where we get in and IT has no clue that logistics has bought 500 devices and they're not prepared and their network's not ready. And they've just paid money for something that IT was never once involved in. And so if IT is not involved in a managed print services procurement, it's going to fail. And so I can't stress enough to ensure that the CIO, the deputy CIO, somebody has been involved, because the other thing to take into consideration is that CAT card and PIV cards have changed over the last 5 years, and it's all down to security. There's a 10-digit login and a 16-digit login. And if you don't have in your procurement that you have to be able to do both, or that, you know, a commercial or a civilian agency is migrating in year 2, and you haven't told that in your RFP because you never spoke to IT, the agency is going to be liable to pay for that upgrade because it wasn't in the RFP. You put in there it was a 10-digit PIV. Again, these are just IT terms, but it's happened year over year over year, where they come back to us and say, well, IT changed it on us halfway through. Well, IT will then come to us and say, nobody ever told us about this. So please understand that MFDs and managed print services contracts need to involve IT. They will help you make the requirements simple. They know what they're doing. They know the requirements, plus they know the future plans of the network. So I know we were talking about making requirements simple, but IT will help you. And they want to help.
Great, thanks. Okay, third, standardized text for certain requirements, the contractual stuff, right? That's just a wise thing to do, especially if it's repetitive. Let me speak to assessments for a minute, especially in the managed print services arena, if you would. There's a lot of equipment, and assessments are just a wise thing to do. There's a thing called optimization. Sometimes you don't really need, let's say there's 100 machines present population. Doesn't mean you have to go 1-for-1 replacements. And that assessment really helps you to save your client money for sure, puts the right equipment in the right spot. There could be smaller equipment that could be consolidated, if you would, to a more robust, faster piece of equipment that serves just as many requirements and people out there in the on the floor, right? And things like SLAs, understand the SLAs in the GSA umbrella contract. 4 hours is outside of the contract, and it's not that we couldn't do it or deliver on that, but that's going to cost extra. There's going to have to be an extra cost to it. So be careful of what you ask for. Scott?
No, I agree. You're absolutely right. The schedules does have the general service level agreements, understanding, what certifications like, what, right inside the schedules is what GSA's requirements are for EP and Energy Star.
Yeah.
And what level, because there's bronze, silver, and gold.
Right.
And so just getting familiar with those will help you get the best value for the government.
Yeah, and I would agree with all of that. I can't tell you how many RFPs we've gotten or read, and we're working with the CO, and we have to ask 15 questions, which we don't want to do because everything is outside of the umbrella of the GSA negotiated contracts. And then people get frustrated and they answer, no, that's not what we want. And so please understand the service level agreements. They are there, they've been negotiated. They're great. And they're very fair across every vendor. We all agree to them. So when you're doing a GSA RFP and you don't know the umbrella terms and conditions, it's hard because then we have to come back almost looking like the bad guys to say, you're outside of the umbrella, you're outside of the umbrella, you're outside of the terms and conditions. And we don't want to do that. And I'm so glad they went through the termination charges. Yeah. Thank you. I can't tell you the amount, I can't even count on two hands the amount of contracting officers who have told me TCCs are not a thing and the government would never sign any vendor, anybody up for that. And then we have to go back to GSA and get GSA to back us up. They are a thing. And I just, understanding the umbrella contract is going to make this easier on you because you'll be able to guide the department who's requesting the procurement best. And it'll be very smooth and fast. Every contract that I've ever seen where the CO understands the umbrella terms and conditions has gone quickly. Doesn't always go our way, but it's gone quickly and it's gone great. So, I just can't, make yourself familiar, please, with the SLAs and the terms and conditions.
Awesome. Scott, do you want to take over from here?
Sure. Yeah, obviously keep it simple, be clear on the requirements, obviously, response date, number of pages, format, how to handle attachments. Those are all important because I've seen RFQs maybe outside of the eBuy tool where there's no ability to attach. So how do I attach to TCC? And you have to reach out to the contracting officer. Can I email it to you? And then you're worried about whether it gets there on time. So making it clear makes both the vendor's job easier and it makes the agency's job easier.
Yeah, I agree. Be sure that we know, the response dates, max pages, questions format, how to handle attachments, all those things that Scott had mentioned. It speeds things along and it makes the experience a lot more positive. Maureen?
I got nothing on that. You guys did a great job.
Next slide, please. Scott.
Putting the RFQ out under the wrong SIN. As GSA has consolidated, there are new SIN numbers, and they do make sense. So just understanding the SINs and what you're looking for. I've seen it kind of all over the place where it's a full MPS solution, 600 devices. We need a couple people on site full time, and it's put out under printing presses, and they're looking for desktops. So it when you do that, it limits your competition because only those vendors that have that SIN, even if it's wrong, can actually respond.
Nothing to add, Scott? Maureen?
No, I agree. I'll see RFPs go out under the cash SIN, and in the RFP, they want a 60-month lease. And so we get very confused on, do they want a 60-month FSMA for services? Do they, so just truly understanding the SIN And if you don't, I've seen, and maybe GSA will tell me I'm wrong, or Scott will, I've seen many of our RFPs that say, we're putting this out under Schedule 36. Will you let us know what SIN you think we should respond? You should respond. And they leave it open, which I prefer, but maybe not everybody, because then we can really help guide you, make sure you're under the right SIN, or in the RFI really is where that belongs.
Right.
These are our requirements. What SIN does your company play under that can fulfill these requirements? And there may be more than one. But in the RFI, you really could get the SIN, put the SIN question out there so we can help you navigate. And I think all of us will tell you the same SIN every time.
Exactly. Not understanding the leasing terms and conditions. I think, John Giannopoulos hit on this a lot. Some things that I see sometimes is it'll be put out on GSA e-buy, but in the statement of work, it'll invoke the FAR clause for termination for convenience, which contradicts the umbrella terms and conditions and can cause vendors not to bid because they don't want to take the risk of ending up with a rental.
Nothing to add on my part. We want to make sure that we finish on time here. So,
yep. And then understanding when and when not to invoke the Service Contract Act. Service Contract Act applies when there's full-time on-site labor, but it doesn't apply for just, a wrench turning break fix maintenance contract. And, I'm sure we've all seen it where there's the list of FAR clauses that are incorporated, and you have to go through which ones do and do not apply. And then ask for mods and all that fun stuff.
Maureen?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
So now we're going to open up the floor for our Q&A. I wanted to pose this first question to our industry partners. So would an agency be eligible for maintenance and consumable plans regardless if they buy or lease?
Would they be eligible for maintenance and supplies?
Regardless of their plan, correct?
Sure. If they cash buy, which everybody loves cash, yes, they can do a monthly maintenance plan. Sure. And it's under the SIN for cash.
Okay, got it. This next question is for the GSA side, maybe John or Mike. Do lease years have to end on September 30th?
Yes, because that's the fiscal year for GSA. We do not do the calendar year. That's it. Nothing else to that.
Well, Mike, that's regulatory, right? I mean, that's not something we can,
Yeah,
we
nothing
can't
we
change
can
it if we
change
wanted
there.
to, yeah.
Right.
And there's definitely been some, times where it'd be preferable if we could, but our hands are
Correct.
kind of tied there. So.
Mhm.
Okay, so it looks like we have another question in the chat. Mike, did you want to take that one due to technology advancements?
I was about to jump into that one, but this is more probably industry. It says due to technology advances, if the IDQ is a total of 20 years, does this include update of the actual print management solutions hardware? So my answer is, did you put that in your requirements? If you want that, you make that part of your requirements. And if the vendor, the contractor can do that, they will answer the RFQ or RFI and just say, hey, yes, we can do that. And you can make the agreement. But that's all about you and that need assessment and you doing a statement of work and putting that in your requirements. That's it.
Got it.
Well, Mike, you mentioned during your presentation, you only you ask for what you need, but you only get what you ask for.
Very
Uh,
true.
I mean,
Very
the
true.
vendors are very, very friendly and nice, but they're not gonna give you more, more than what you're asking for, right? So if there's a requirement that you want or expect, and you need to put it in there up front. And it'll be addressed, at the time of award or time of the procurements out there.
Excellent advice. I would agree with that 100%. We don't usually try to add anything extra because we're just really not sure, where that's going to end up. So if you put it in, we'll answer.
Exactly. And, I'm sure, Maureen and John, you see this, 3-4 years in when a requirement changes, and then you go back and forth that it wasn't in the contract.
We have dealt with it. Now, the IDIQ is for 20 years.
Right.
Your contract may only be for 5, and we do update. We obviously don't have the same machine for 20 years. So we
Right.
do product swap on the contract, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do update our technology over 20 years as we update it on the contract.
Yeah, like
in our
I mentioned.
services. So
Yeah, the schedule order would be for 5, and then
so you are
product
getting
update
our,
would be,
we do, as soon as we launch a new product or a new service, we do report it to GSA, just like I'm sure every other industry lead does, and we get it updated on the contract. So you're not stuck with our document something from the 47267 from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Some of you may still have them, but yes, so we do get that updated. But this is where also talking to IT, we've had where they switch servers, and you've got a fax server solution, and you come to us and say, we need a whole other fax server solution. And this was in my RFP. Well, the change was on the government, and you didn't put that you were changing. So we can't be held responsible if you all of a sudden up and change a server and you didn't put that in your RFP. Put in your RFP that there could be network changes. Let us ask the questions. Let us add the leading questions. You're going to pay more for that, but you're going to be covered. And that's what's really important.
Right. That is the bottom line.
Yeah, you'll pay for it, but you're going to be covered.
Excellent question on the supply chain issues. How do you tackle leasing if the equipment will not be delivered for 60 or 90 days, or even more after the period of performance? Do you extend the contract, or what do you suggest? Well, that's a good question that we don't really have an answer to. It is changing literally every day. It's a matter of coming to the table, and Scott and Maureen, correct me if I'm wrong. Every situation is different. It could be dependent upon the model, could be dependent on a number of things. And extensions are usually a answer. But however, if you're switching vendors, you've got, another consideration there that you have to negotiate. Comments?
You know what? Because you're right, John, because it really depends. This will be a case-by-case basis, because from our point and from GSA point, we haven't accounted that. So it will be sitting back and with our industry partners trying to figure out how we could have our agency deal with the shortages. So all we can say right now is be a case-by-case basis, and we just hope it doesn't happen, but we'll deal with it when it happens.
And nobody wants it to. Yeah, go ahead, Maureen.
It's not a forever. It's COVID.
No.
This is a COVID world. This is a COVID situation. It's not just MFDs. They're having the same thing with Dell computer chips. My sister can't get foam for her couch, for her pillows. This is a supply chain issue due to COVID. This is something, I thank you, Mike, for saying we'll tackle it as it comes, and case by case. All the industry vendors are doing the best they can. You can see the news, those ships floating out there, they have your MFDs on them, we promise. It's the ports. So this is not a forever thing. We hope this is done within the year and we're back to normal. And then, yes, you can count on that. Sure, there's going to be glitches here and there, but please understand this is not the new normal. This is just a small patch in time.
Correct. Do we have any other questions outside of this, Olivia?
Nope, I think we got to all of them.
Right on time.
Yeah.
That concludes the question and answer portion. I just want to thank everyone for their time today. I just want to reiterate that the copy of the slides as well as your CLP certificate will be emailed to all the attendees in the next couple of hours. As for the link to the live recording and the Q&A document, those will be posted online. Give us maybe a week or so for our Office of Communications to make sure the video is 508 compliant. Thanks again for attending and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.